that where are we going to go from here? You know, it's all very well to complain and give stories of governance and poor governance, but what are we going to do about it? This is not an easy one. I think economic reforms are easier to do than the kind of reforms I was talking about. Reforming the police, for example, the Supreme Court has told the state, and everybody knows there's a report. What are the reforms we need to do to make the police more accountable? But the states are not implementing it because the chief ministers want that power to do what they want to do with their police. In the case of the bureaucracy, there are 50 reports since the famous Appleby report in the 50s. There are more than 50 reports. And even now, Moyle produced a report on the reform of that. And I think that the vested interest, when Manmohan Singh became Prime Minister, in his first 3 speeches, he says, my first priority is governance and to do the reform of the bureaucracy which is under me. What has he done? And so it's not going to be easy.
But in the midst of this very depressing picture, we've also had some very interesting reforms. And I wondered what you thought about it. We do have a right to information. We do have provisions for social auditing in the National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, which seems by all accounts to be doing somewhat better than most programs. We do have provisions for greater transparency all the way at the local level. We now are talking about the UID as an effort to try and inject transparency and accountability in our delivery systems. So I was curious to know what you thought of those, and are those steps in the right direction, or are these low-hanging fruit and we're not really addressing the bigger problem that you mentioned of administrative reform?
Well, I think, Yamini, you've answered your question, because really social audits, right to information are all after the fact. The Corrupt Act has been done, and after that we are auditing it. The question is, how do we make the person, the civil servant who deals with the citizen, behave in the right way? Now, one answer that seems to work more often than not is e-governance, is that you just go around and make the whole process so transparent that you actually don't need to have the interface between the government official and the citizen. For example, you know, I have to get my driver's license renewed in a few weeks, and I'm already dreading it. Exactly. I am already dreading it. But in some places, you can actually do it on the internet. You don't have to go to the RTO. You just present your documents and you can do it. I knew you could do it in Andhra. I'm not sure exactly, but Karnataka and Andhra have a little bit more of this. Or railway tickets. We all remember the horrendous experience of buying a railway ticket, and now you can actually do it on the internet. So these are ways that we know for sure. I mean, certainly this whole area, and the UID that you mentioned is obviously a step in the right direction, because a lot of the bogus rolls in the case of ration cards, or in the case of the Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, all that corruption would be reduced. But you know, I guess the dimension that worries me also, Yamini, is the dimension of the moral dimension. that in the process, when somebody said dreading it, it is my worry that by paying a bribe, I'm somehow wounding my character. And not only am I wounding my character, but the other guy who's taking the bribe, his character also is getting wounded. And so a nation, dharma, talk about dharma in society. This is really the huge effect of. Now, if we do institution reforms, for example, if we could remove one school teacher or punish one school teacher from being absent, the next day school teachers would show up. But the question is, would they then teach with inspiration to their teachers? There's a question of dharma. In other words, accountability. Now, if you started measuring outcomes, if the RTE had focused on giving continuous tests or something like that, whereby we could measure outcomes, perhaps the teachers also would teach with some degree of concern.